Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International.
And I'm CJ Hero. Welcome to the program. On tonight's headlines.
Hundreds of soldiers and police swooped on a railway station in Yangon, seeking to arrest workers on strike to protest against the military coup in Myanmar.
National Task Force Against COVID-19 Deputy Chief Implementer Vivencio Dizon said some 117,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccines from Pfizer-BioNTech will arrive in the country next month.
1 in 3 women have already suffered physical violence or sexual abuse, according to the World Health Organization, warning that the coronavirus pandemic was deepening the problem.
And Queen Elizabeth II responded to explosive racism claims from grandson Prince Harry and his wife Meghan, voicing deep concern and sympathizing with their troubles with royal life.
And to the ongoing crisis in Myanmar, hundreds of soldiers and police swooped on a railway station in Yangon today, seeking to arrest workers on strike to protest against the military coup in Myanmar. Thousands of government workers across the country have been participating in a civil disobedience movement aimed at choking the state's institutions and paralyzing the economy. The movement has resulted in hospital disruptions, bank closures, and empty ministry offices. Hundreds of soldiers and police were deployed to Malwa Gone railway station and its staff housing compound early Wednesday morning, where about 800 workers are participating in strike action. The military has sought to stem the flow of news of its crackdown, throttling the country's internet every night and stepping up pressure on independent media. The offices of 2 media outlets, the Mizima and the Kamarayut Media, were raided on Tuesday after Myanmar Now was targeted the previous day. 5 media organizations also had their publishing licenses revoked. It said at least 28 journalists had been arrested since the coup, and about 11 were still in custody, including an Associated Press photographer. Myanmar's ambassador to Britain was recalled on Tuesday after he urged the junta to release Suu Kyi and President Win Myint. He failed to perform the assigned duties and had been called back, according to the Global New Light of Myanmar reported this: the military denies responsibility for deaths since the coup and defends seizing power as justified by irregularities in November elections won by Aung San Suu Kyi's party.
Kneeling before them in the dust of a northern Myanmar city, Sister Ambrose Nutang begged a group of heavily armed police officers to spare the children and take her life instead. This image in the city of Myitkyina on Monday came as Myanmar struggles with the chaotic aftermath of the military's February 1 ouster of civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi. As protests demanding the return of democracy have rolled on, the junta has steadily escalated its use of force, using tear gas, water cannon, rubber bullets, and live rounds. Protesters took to the streets of Myitkyina, the capital of Kachin State, on Monday, wearing hard hats and carrying homemade shields. As police started massing around them, the nun, Ambrose Nutang, and 2 other nuns pleaded them to leave. A local rescue team confirmed to AFP that 2 men were shot dead on the spot during Monday's clash, though it did not confirm whether live rounds or rubber bullets were used. Also, people barricaded in a Yangon neighborhood overnight said Tuesday that Myanmar security forces searched their homes room by room for anti-coup protesters, targeting apartments flying the flag of Aung San Suu Kyi's party. By nightfall, security forces had sealed off a block of streets with around 200 protesters still inside, according to the UN Rights Office, prompting alarm from diplomatic missions and calls for their safe release. By dawn, security forces appeared to have retreated, allowing some protesters to escape from the area.
In other news, National Task Force Against COVID-19 or NTF Deputy Chief Implementer Vivencio Dizon said some 117,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccine from Pfizer BioNTech will now arrive in the country next month. Take a look.
Yung upgrade. Opo, nangako po ang World Health Organization na darating din po ang susunod na mga tranches ng AstraZeneca na manggagaling sa COVAX facility. Kaya umaasa po tayo na mas marami dun sa 1.4 million na Sinovac ang matatanggap natin ngayong buwan ng Marso. Hopefully po umabot tayo ng mahigit 2 million ngayong March. Nag-commit na po ang WHO na darating po yung 117,000 doses ng Pfizer ngayong Abril sa susunod na buwan. Kaya malaking bagay din po ito, gagong-gago na para sa ating mga healthcare workers na priority nating matapos hanggang sa buwan ng Abril at Mayo. Opo, aabot po ang Pfizer. No? Kung darating po ito ng Abril, kasi sa pangako ng WHO, aabot po ito para sa ating mga healthcare workers.
Meanwhile, Dizon said the government has not yet released any budget for the purchase of COVID-19 vaccines, as those that arrive in the country were donations from the Chinese government and the COVAX facility. He added the budget will be released once the order made by the government will arrive, including the 1 million Sinovac coronavac doses that will come in this month.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said one vaccine maker now plans to accelerate its deliveries, and federal regulators have cleared a fourth COVID-19 vaccine for use in this country. Here's the Prime Minister.
We now have 4 vaccines approved by independent regulators in Canada, more than any other country. Again, you can count on the fact that any vaccine approved in Canada is both safe and effective. Last week, we received almost 1 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines. This week, we're getting another 1 million. And before the end of this month, we will have received a total of 8 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines. On the 500,000 AstraZeneca vaccine doses delivered from the Serum Institute last week, these shots are being distributed to provinces as we speak. More and more people are getting vaccinated every day. That means more grandparents, healthcare workers, and vulnerable people are now safer. Our top priority is to get you your shot as soon as possible. No one will be left behind.
According to CBC, or the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, the new Pfizer delivery schedule and the Johnson & Johnson approval are expected to accelerate Canada's vaccine rollout, which has so far lagged behind dozens of other countries that have vaccinated more people per capita.
Meanwhile, the EU will receive an extra 4 million BioNTech Pfizer vaccine doses over the next 2 weeks to be deployed to COVID-19 hotspots. According to European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen, the delivery over and above already agreed supplies from the vaccine maker will go to affected border regions within the bloc to help ensure or restore free movement of goods and people. Take a look.
And we are mainly worried about hotspots, where we see even increasing infection rates despite tough measures that have been taken. We see no new border controls that have a negative impact on cross-border workers and on the flow of goods. Therefore, the Commission negotiated an additional 4 million doses of BioNTech Pfizer vaccine. Still in March, it is on top of the actual delivery schedule. BioNTech Pfizer has proven so far to be effective against the known variants, and therefore we expect the additional doses to be vaccinated in hotspot areas in order to reduce the spread of the virus and the spread of the mutants. Yes, what we see are overall rising numbers of deliveries of doses. So we are over 60 million now of deliveries, more than 40 million have been administered. So there is a constant increase, and that is good, but it's a daily fight to secure the supply chain, the raw materials, to work with the companies.
Von der Leyen called the additional agreement quick and decisive action on the part of her commission and emphasized that restoring freedom of movement within the EU was key for the functioning of health systems and the single market.
Meanwhile, Brazil broke its record for new daily COVID-19 deaths on Tuesday with nearly 2,000 fatalities as the pandemic overwhelms hospitals and vaccinations progress slowly. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, the Director General of the World Health Organization, has urged the country to take aggressive steps, warning that Brazil could affect its neighbors and beyond if it did not take the virus seriously. Take a look.
Underline that the situation is very serious and we're very concerned, and the public health measures that Brazil takes should be aggressive while also rolling out vaccines. But the concern is not just about Brazil only. You know, Brazil neighbors almost the whole Latin America, many countries, I don't know, except 2 or so. Means if Brazil is not serious, then it will continue to affect all the neighborhood there and beyond.
The Health Ministry reported a daily total of 1,972 new deaths in the country, which has the world's second highest overall toll, exceeded only by the United States. It also reported 70,762 new cases of COVID-19, meaning 11.1 million people have now caught the virus in the country, while a total of 268,370 have died. The previous daily death record was set on March 3 with just over 1,900 fatalities. The figure has been rising steadily over the past 2 weeks. Brazil is facing a dire situation with intensive care units more than 80% occupied in 25 of Brazil's 27 capital cities, according to a report released Tuesday by Public Health Institute Fiocruz. President Jair Bolsonaro, who flouts expert advice on fighting the coronavirus, last week urged Brazilians to stop whining about COVID-19 and renewed his attacks on stay-at-home measures. Brazil's vaccine campaign is progressing slowly. A total of 8.6 million people, or 4.1% of the population, have received a first dose of vaccine, and only 2.9 million have received a second dose. The vaccines under use in Brazil are CoronaVac, which was developed by Chinese firm Sinovac, and the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine.
Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of Los Angeles children could return to their classrooms next month, almost a year after the coronavirus pandemic forced learning online across the U.S. Now, the second largest school district in the country has lagged behind others in the effort to get students back on campus after a prolonged battle that struggled to balance safety concerns with educational needs. Under a reopening roadmap agreed between the district and a teachers' union, preschools and elementary schools would be the first to resume in-person lessons in mid-April. Secondary schools would follow by the end of the month. The agreement is contingent on vaccinations for school staff and on restrictions being eased throughout Los Angeles County. It also still needs to be approved by the school board and the membership of the United Teachers Los Angeles Union. In New York City, the nation's largest school district, schools began their phased reopenings in December. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has urged a return to in-person learning for the nation's 55 million public school students and said it should not be conditional on teachers' access to vaccines. More than 61 million Americans have now received one or more vaccine doses, about 24% of the adult population, and the immunization rate has been steadily rising after a shaky start. Los Angeles is among the hardest hit parts of California, a state that has logged the highest overall coronavirus death toll in the country.
In other news, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki assures the world's media that Biden's dogs won't be away from the White House for long, saying their banishment to Delaware was planned before a biting incident involving one of the hounds, and they will return soon. She adds that there's no plan to replace them with a cat yet.
On Monday, the first family's younger dog, Major, was surprised by an unfamiliar person and reacted in a way that resulted in a minor injury to the individual, which was handled by the White House Medical Unit with no further treatment needed. It had been previously planned already for the dogs to be cared for by family friends in Delaware during Dr. Biden's travels to military bases this week. She has a 3-day trip this week, and the dogs will return to the White House soon.
We were promised a White House cat. What happened to that?
Where is the cat? Today's a good day for the cat. I don't have any update on the cat. We know the cat will break the internet, but I don't have any update on its status.
From the U.S. to the UK now, where Queen Elizabeth II responded to explosive racism claims from grandson Prince Harry and his wife Meghan, voicing deep concern and sympathizing with their troubles with royal life. The whole family is saddened to learn the full extent of how challenging the last few years have been for Harry and Meghan. She said in a statement, the issues raised, particularly that of race, are concerning, while some recollections may vary, and they are taken very seriously and will be addressed by the family privately. Buckingham Palace has come under mounting pressure to respond to the claims made in an Oprah Winfrey interview, first broadcast on Sunday, which triggered a crisis unseen since the 1990s. It set off a whirl of speculation about the identity of the senior royal, who asked how dark their child's skin would be before he was born. Meghan, whose mother is black and father is white, also spoke about how she had suicidal thoughts but failed to receive any support during her time in the royal family. The explosive racism claim has reportedly left the palace in turmoil and scrambling how best to address it. A YouGov poll of 4,656 people after the interview aired on British television on Monday indicated almost a third, or 32%, felt the couple was unfairly treated, the same proportion as those who thought the opposite.
Meanwhile, Britain's Prince Charles, Prince of Wales, visited a pop-up NHS COVID-19 vaccine clinic in northwest London. Prince Harry and Meghan's claims have been likened to a bomb being dropped on Britain's most famous family and one of the country's most revered institutions. Watch this.
Yes. No. Oh, good morning. I don't interrupt you too much. It's okay. It's your turn. It is. I'm staring at you. So take your mind off it. Okay. Where do you feel it? I'm not feeling it. My husband is happy, so now I have mine. And I just have 2 children that he loves. Yes, he is. Thank you so much.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel, hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation, and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Welcome back. U.S. President Joe Biden will hold first ever joint talks Friday with the leaders of Australia, India, and Japan, boosting an emerging four-way alliance, often cast as a bulwark against China. It will be one of the first summits, albeit in virtual format, for Biden, who has vowed to revive U.S. alliances in the wake of the disarray of Donald Trump's administration. Take a look.
Break the internet, but I don't have on Friday morning. President Biden will meet virtually with his counterparts in the Quad, Prime Minister Suga of Japan, Prime Minister Modi of India, and Prime Minister Morrison of Australia, formed in the aftermath of the 2004 tsunami and formalized in 2007. The Quad has met regularly at the working and foreign minister level. However, Friday will be the first time that the Quad is meeting at the leader level. That President Biden has made this one of his earliest multilateral engagements speaks to the importance we place on close cooperation with our allies and partners in the Indo-Pacific.
The meeting of the so-called Quad comes amid rising tensions with China, which is seen as flexing its muscle both in trade and security realms. China struck a cautionary note over the nascent alliance taking shape in its backyard. The Quad should conform to prevailing trends of peaceful development and win-win cooperation, according to Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian in Beijing. Both Saki and India, which earlier announced the participation of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, said the talks would take up climate change and the COVID-19 pandemic, two key priorities for President Biden. The talks, also involving Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga, will touch as well on promoting maritime security and ensuring safe, equitable, and affordable vaccines to fight COVID-19 in Asia, according to the Indian statement.
In other news, China on Tuesday threatened unspecified retaliation after its state broadcaster CGTN was fined by the UK's media regulator for alleged biased reporting. Ofcom on Monday fined the network £225,000 after UK national Peter Humphrey complained that he was forced to make a criminal confession on China Global Television Network in 2013, as well as complaints that CGTN programs on Hong Kong's democracy protests had failed to maintain due impartiality. Fraud investigator Humphrey was jailed for more than 2 years by a Chinese court in 2014 in connection with a corruption case involving pharmaceutical giant GlaxoSmithKline. Ofcom last month revoked CGTN's license after finding the state-backed ownership structure broke UK law. Beijing on Tuesday said the fine showed intense ideological prejudice against China and was naked political oppression. The Foreign Ministry said later Tuesday that it had summoned UK Ambassador Caroline Wilson and lodged solemn representations after she published an article on social media app WeChat last week that called for more press freedom in China. Wilson's article was full of didactic arrogance and showed double standards, the ministry complained in a statement. Dissident confessions. Last month, China banned BBC World News, accusing it of flouting guidelines over a hard-hitting report about Beijing's treatment of the country's Uyghur minority. The move was followed by accusations from Chinese officials and state media that the BBC had manipulated its footage to cast China in a negative light.
To other news now. In Japan, Yuto Naganuma looks silently as the cold sea breeze sweeps over the crumbling walls of the school where his little brother was lost in Japan's devastating 2011 tsunami. 10 years on, Naganuma and others like him form a generation whose young lives were shaped by what is known in Japan as the triple disaster, a powerful earthquake that sparked a terrifying tsunami and the worst nuclear accident since Chernobyl. Take a look.
普通の暮らしの中で、逃げれる場所があって、逃げるまでの時間もあって、でもそれでも逃げられなくて命がなくなった場所なので、そういったことはここから学んでいく教訓になればいいなとは思ってるんですけど。
私がここにいた時に私を捕まりながら手を伸ばしてきたんですね。ちょうどこの辺りまでもうその人は来ていたので、手を伸ばせば捕まえられたと思います。でも波の強さが強くて、その人たちはそのまま波に流されていったんです。で流されていったまま私はどうすることもできなくて、手を伸ばし返すこともしなかったんですね。その亡くなった人たちの表情を見た時に一番初めに思ったのは、なぜこういう被害が出てしまったのかって。だとしたらもう二度とこういった表情を作らない、こういった人たちを出さないことが残された人の役目なんじゃないかとずっと思っていました。10年が経って初めて気づいたことは、もうこの地域でさえ教科書の中の出来事になりつつあるんですね。それはここで被災した僕の体験がありますけれども、その被災をすらその地域で伝えることができない。そしてその地域の子どもたちはどうして東日本大震災のことを学ぶのか、それは教科書で勉強するしかなくなってしまったんですね。
In other news, a trial centered on the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis pushed ahead with jury selection. Former police officer Derek Chauvin is charged with second-degree murder and manslaughter. The judge allowed lawyers to question potential jurors. Chauvin is dismissed from the police force after he was captured on video with his knee on the neck of a pleading, gasping Floyd for nearly 9 minutes. Chauvin, who has been free on bail, appeared on court on Tuesday, surrounded by plexiglass as a COVID-19 precaution. He frequently jotted down notes on a yellow legal pad and conferred with his lawyers as prospective jurors were being questioned. Several potential jurors expressed concerns for their safety because of the high-profile nature of the trial. The identities of the jurors will not be revealed until after the trial. 3 other officers involved in Floyd's arrest, Alexander Kyung, Thomas Lane, and Tu Thao, face lesser charges and will be tried separately. Chauvin's case is being watched as a potential marker of change in a country that recently elected its first black vice president, but has seen police officers historically escape punishment for abusive acts.
Saudi activist Loujain Al-Hathloul appeared in court for the second time since her provisional release from prison last month as she appealed restrictions, including a 5-year travel ban. Hathloul, 31, best known for campaigning against a decades-long ban on female drivers, was detained in May 2018 with about a dozen other women activists just weeks before the ban was lifted. Saudi authorities have not officially commented on her detention trial or release. Hatlul is appealing her sentence as well as restrictions placed on her and her family. The release of Hatlul, who is still on probation and is barred from leaving Saudi Arabia for 5 years, came as the kingdom faces renewed U.S. scrutiny of its human rights record under President Joe Biden. According to the Voice of America, Hatlul rose to prominence in 2013 when she began publicly campaigning for women's right to drive in Saudi Arabia. She was arrested for the first time in 2014 while attempting to drive across the border from the United Arab Emirates, where she had a valid driver's license. Now, she spent 73 days in a women's detention facility, an experience she later said helped shape her campaigning against the kingdom's male guardianship system.
1 in 3 women have already suffered physical violence or sexual abuse, the World Health Organization said Tuesday, warning that the coronavirus pandemic was deepening the problem. In a report, the UN Health Agency found that around 30% of all women and girls over the age of 15, around 733 million or 736 million people, have already been victims of such violence throughout their lifetimes, mainly at the hands of intimate partners. Watch this.
Globally, when we look at the combined effect of intimate partner violence and non-partner sexual violence, we have 30%, 1 in 3 women who have experienced at least one of these forms of violence globally. And this figure hasn't really changed in the past 8 years since we've looked at it. This is driven largely by intimate partner violence, which is very high. It's 27%, so 1 in 4 women globally are affected, are subjected to either physical or sexual violence from a partner at least once in their lifetime. Since the age of 15, we see that this violence starts very early. Between 1 out of every 4 adolescent girls aged 15 to 19 already have experienced or been subjected to either physical or sexual violence in the hands of a close partner. And I think this is very serious.
Tuesday's report is based on global data from 2000 to 2018. It follows a first report on the subject in 2013, but Garcia Moreno said comparisons were complicated due to a shift in methodology and access to far more data for the second report. What is clear, she said, is that the rates are unacceptably high and need urgent action. The report said significant stigma around this issue meant the true figure was likely much higher. One alarming finding was that partner violence often begins very early in life, with almost a quarter of all adolescent 15 to 19-year-old girls who had been in a relationship subjected to physical or sexual violence by their partner.
In other news, a radicalized Singaporean Muslim has been arrested under tough laws that allow detention without trial for planning a deadly stabbing spree against Jews, according to officials today. Such cases are rare in multi-ethnic Singapore, where different religious and ethnic groups generally live peacefully side by side, but they do occur occasionally. In the latest case, 20-year-old Amirul Ali planned to ambush and kill at least 3 Jewish men as they left a synagogue after prayers, according to security officials. He became radicalized after researching the Israeli-Palestinian conflict online and planned to travel to Gaza in the Palestinian territories to join Islamic group Hamas's military wing, they said. Amirul was very serious. He had made detailed preparations. He had a knife prepared for his attack, Law and Home Affairs Minister K. Shanmugam told local media. He decided to target the abdomen area because that is where the heavy bleeding will cause quick death, he said. But Amirul, who had been doing compulsory national service as an administrative support assistant, shelved his plans as he was uncertain whether he would attain martyrdom. Nevertheless, the Defense Ministry became suspicious and raised the alarm, leading to his arrest this month. Amirul was detained under the Internal Security Act, which allows for detention without trial for up to 2 years. The city-state of 5.7 million is mostly ethnic Chinese, but is also home to a sizable ethnic Malay Muslim minority. Its Jewish population is tiny, numbering only around 2,500 according to local media.
Eagle News will be right back. Please don't go away.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights, sharpen your instincts for smart decision making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Maglaro muna tayo ng pick-up! Ang batang laro lang yan. Ayaw namin ng kuya-kap ko yan.
Baguhin mo nga yung ugali mo sa kalusugan, hindi maganda yun.
Okay lang maglaro dito sa Plaza Rodolfo, pero ang magkalat, bawal! Ikaw ba lahat kumain yan? Ikaw ba kalat yan lahat?
Hindi tama yung ginagawa mo, Bebeng, ha?
Sana, lahat na lang ng mga tao dito sa Barangay Aguila maging batang tulad ko.
Hi, Bebeng!
What?
Sumaya tayong lahat. Saya-saya.
Welcome back to the news. U.S. President Joe Biden's massive relief plan is on track to cross the finish line Wednesday with a final House vote, stimulating an economy digging out from the coronavirus pandemic and offering a lifeline for millions of families. In an effort to drive home how this sweeping package helps the economy, Biden on Tuesday visited a business billed as Washington's oldest hardware store, which has benefited from the Paycheck Protection Program begun under Donald Trump's administration to help businesses stay afloat during the crisis. The president took a jab at Trump, though, saying that a lot of money went to people who should not have gotten help. Watch this.
Or you can see a lot of our 400,000 small businesses went out of business. Yeah. They got in line, but they couldn't get the help. And we found out that an awful lot of that went to bigger businesses that, in fact, weren't supposed to qualify for this because they there used to be a thing called an inspector general to see where the money went. And the last administration fired the inspector general, so a lot of the money went to people who shouldn't have gotten help with this new program. And we're going to continue this, by the way. It's not only, you've been the only businesses with fewer than 20 folks to apply in the last couple of weeks. But now we're going to keep the focus on it because a lot of minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, are increased significantly by 20 and 15%, as well as giving people who, in fact, weren't able to get in line before.
The $1.9 trillion package, broadly popular with Americans and approved by the Senate over the weekend, is expected to narrowly clear Congress days before a crucial deadline, culminating a weeks-long negotiation over its cost and scope. If it reaches his desk, Biden, who made the American Rescue Plan his top legislative priority, could sign the historic bill into law by week's end. But the plan that funds COVID vaccines, preserves unemployment benefits for millions, and sends relief checks of up to $1,400 to most Americans can afford very few Democratic defections. All Republicans are in lockstep against the package, and Democrats enjoy the smallest majority in years in the 435-seat House of Representatives. A Tuesday vote laying out the parameters of the next day's action on the bill augured it's a narrow path to success. The tally was 219 to 210 in favor of proceeding, with no Republicans in support and one Democrat joining the GOP in opposition.
The OECD sharply raised its 2021 global growth forecast on Tuesday as the deployment of vaccines and a huge U.S. stimulus program have greatly improved economic prospects. The Paris-based Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development said it now expects the global economy to grow by 5.6%, an increase of 1.4 percentage points from its December forecast. Take a look.
So the world economy is doing a little better, and we have revised upward our projections. We have a slightly improved health situation, more vaccination. We also have better production and trade. And lastly, we do have a sizable fiscal stimulus in the US. So our upgraded global projection include the U.S. fiscal stimulus. That's 1.9 trillion on top of the 900 billions that were spent in December. This is raising the U.S. projection to 6.5% this year, and the global output growth to by 1 percentage point. So there are huge and significant risks to our economic projections, and most notably including with the pace of vaccination. What we know is the faster countries vaccinate and the quicker they can reopen their economy. And because there was sizable fiscal support, then people can resume their normal life. So it's super important, and the main message we're sending with this outlook is speed up on the pace of vaccination to reopen the economy. So it's the message is really that the combination of healthcare support and vaccination with fiscal spending is actually allowing to reopen the economy and people to resume their normal activity, being on work, on consuming, spending, going out shopping. So it's really of the utmost importance that we do that. We are not saying that Europe is not doing enough on the fiscal side. We're saying they should speed up on the vaccination side.
The OECD said global output could rise above the pre-pandemic level in mid-2021. It noted, however, increasing signs of divergence between countries as some nations are faster to roll out vaccines while others employ containment measures. For the moment, only China, India, and Turkey have surpassed pre-pandemic levels of economic output.
Boosted by new contracts for the 737 MAX, Boeing reported Tuesday that new commercial plane orders last month exceeded cancellations for the first time since November 2019. Boeing received 82 orders for its planes in February, including 39 for the 737 MAX, which returned to service in late 2020 following a 20-month grounding after 2 deadly crashes. Boeing saw 51 order cancellations in February, according to data on its website. The figures point to a partial comeback from one of Boeing's rockiest periods in its more than 100-year history. Amid the grounding of the best-selling MAX and the global downturn in travel demand caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, the aviation giant suffered 655 cancellations or plane order conversions last year. The United States cleared the MAX to resume flights in November, and more than 160 of 195 aviation regulators around the world have followed suit. 14 airlines have reintegrated the plane into their schedules. Boeing delivered 22 planes in February, including 18 MAX aircraft. The company reported no deliveries of the 787 Dreamliner, which have been suspended due to quality flaws.
In other aviation news, Hong Kong carrier Cathay Pacific said it suffered a record $2.8 billion loss last year as the coronavirus pandemic wiped out demand for travel, and the airline warned of a long road to recovery ahead. Chairman Patrick Healy described 2020 as the most challenging in the airline's 70-year history and said much will now depend on how effective and widespread global vaccination programs are. The company's losses were higher than estimates compiled by Bloomberg News. Cathay racked up an attributable loss of 21.6 billion Hong Kong dollars or 2.8 billion US dollars for 2020, going deeper into the red as the year wore on. Its second half losses clocked in at 11.8 billion Hong Kong dollars, up from 9.9 billion Hong Kong dollars in the first 6 months of the year when the pandemic first emerged. Like all major airlines, Cathay Pacific has seen its business evaporate during the coronavirus pandemic, but the Hong Kong carrier has had an especially torrid year because it has no domestic market to fall back on. It also entered the pandemic in an already vulnerable position. When the coronavirus first emerged, Hong Kong had fallen into recession and Cathay Pacific in the red as months of huge and disruptive democracy protests in 2019 led to a plunge in customers, especially from the lucrative mainland Chinese market. The airline also found itself punished by authorities in Beijing because some of its employees joined or voiced support for the protests.
Russia's X5 Group, the country's leading food retailer group, announces the launch of a facial recognition payment system in more than 50 Moscow supermarkets, with plans to extend the technology to its entire network. Watch this.
В принципе, на данный момент у нас установлено больше 5500 касс, оснащенных этим биометрическим модулем. И мы планируем в самое ближайшее время активно раскатить это в магазины по всей территории страны. Прежде всего, в принципе, когда только появились сами кассы самообслуживания, мы тоже опасались, что люди старшего возраста не будут готовы ими пользоваться. А по факту оказалось, что нет. Если ты делаешь удобную функцию, удобный продукт, удобное решение, то все начинают им пользоваться, и все страхи очень быстро уходят.
To launch its facial recognition payment system, the X5 Group, which owns the Pyaterochka convenience stores and the Perekskretok, a supermarket chain, has joined forces with the Visa payment system and Russia's state giant Sberbank that is striving to become an IT company. The service will only be available at self-service checkouts for Sberbank customers after the bank recently allowed its users to set up facial recognition to pay from their accounts. To complete the transaction in the pandemic era, customers will need to remove their face masks for a second and look into the camera. The service has rolled out in 52 Perekrestok supermarkets and will expand to a total of 150 by the end of the month. Some 3,000 stores across Russia will feature facial recognition payment systems by the end of the year. Facial recognition is rapidly developing in Russia, raising the concerns of activists over state surveillance. At the start of the pandemic, Moscow used its tens of thousands of surveillance cameras to monitor compliance with lockdown measures.
In other news, Thai Prime Minister General Prayut Chan-o-cha sprayed alcohol on reporters to escape questions about cabinet reshuffle at a press conference following the cabinet meeting. Take a look.
Finally, in our news, an aid to humanity was recently held in Phuket, Thailand, and here's Novi Kawile for the details.
Affected by the In view of the recent situation of the world, the people are continuously suffering from poverty and lack of livelihood due to COVID-19. Many have lost their jobs and are confined in their homes with nowhere to go. Among those greatly affected by the shutting down of the world is the tourism-dependent island of Phuket in Thailand. With a sincere concern for the plight of Filipinos affected by the pandemic, the Iglesia ni Cristo or Church of Christ, through the Felix Y. Manalo Foundation, brought prompt aid to church members in Phuket, Thailand. The Lingap sa Mamamayan or Aid to Humanity was held on February 23 and was greatly appreciated by the members of the church. The aid was given mainly to the ones who have lost their jobs since March of 2020. These are mostly hotel employees whose hotels have had to close because there are no more tourists. Others are in the entertainment industry, such as singers and bands. They are truly grateful for the help extended by the church through the Felix Y. Manalo Foundation. And despite the difficulty, they are remaining hopeful in the situation. They are already gearing up and expecting that some hotels are already open mid this year.
Kami pong mga kapatid sa lokal ng Phuket, distrito ng Thailand, ay nagpapasalamat sa puso sa ating pinakamamahal na kapatid ng lugar namin, sapagkat halos isang taon na walang hanap buhay ang mga kapatid. Nakatanggap kami ng pinansyal na tulong galing sa ating pinakamamahal na kapatid. Maraming salamat po, kapatid na Eduardo Manalo. Kami po ay nangangako patuloy na magpapasakop sa inyo. Patuloy na dadalo ng pagsamba. Maraming salamat po.
Reporting from Phuket, Thailand, I'm Novi Kawile. We live in interesting times.
Thank you so much, Novi. Well, that's really good.
Yes.
That's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Hero. Please join us again tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.